Hi, it's Zara Altair, and this is Mystery Monday, and it's Ask Me Anything. Welcome. This is my first Mystery Monday live broadcast, and I'm really happy to be here. I love mysteries, and I love writing them, and I love talking about them. I thought I'd start today with a little hint for writers about what readers are looking for in a mystery. There's certain tropes that apply to this genre, and readers really expect them when you're writing a mystery. And the first one is, in the beginning, you go from the start of the story to the corpse. Boom. And that's what pulls the detective in. And then the next thing that happens once that detective is in is the evidence scavenger hunt. And the detective, whether a professional law enforcement officer or a non-professional, is going to start down the trail of trying to find out who killed the victim. It's just that simple. So we have the start to the corpse, and then we have the evidence scavenger hunt, and that's a big part of the mystery, is looking at false clues, and red herrings pop up, and um, interviewing potential suspects. All of that goes on in the evidence scavenger hunt. And for those of you who are just joining, I'm Zara Altair, and this is Mystery Monday. So ask me anything about mysteries. Right now we're talking about the tropes that readers expect in a mystery. And we've covered the start to the corpse and the evidence scavenger hunt, where the detective goes out and tries to figure out who did it. And then the next part is sweating the perp. The detective has figured out who did it, and now the objective is to get that person to confess. Not always easy, and of course there are many ways that this happens, but this is one of the basic things that readers expect in a mystery, is that getting the perp to talk, getting him to talk, him or her. And then the last part of the mystery is the summation, and that's where the detective puts together how it all happened, and oftentimes how they came to that conclusion. And it can happen in many ways. So those are the four main things that readers expect in a mystery. So if you're writing a mystery, you want to be sure to include those things. So we have the start to the corpse, the evidence scavenger hunt, the questioning of the perpetrator once the detective has found it, and then the summation. So if you're thinking about starting to write a mystery, these are four things that your readers are going to expect. And your end goal is definitely to engage your readers. So there are lots and lots and lots of different types of mystery, traditional mysteries within the genre, but your readers are going to expect those four elements in your mystery. So you always want to be thinking about your reader. And I think one thing that's really important and I know it helps me when I'm writing, is to think of that one reader, the one person that you're telling the story to. Um, and that really helps me focus on getting into the story and relating all the elements. And then the next thing I would want to talk about today is your detective. And if you think about mysteries, whether you watch them as movies or TV serials, or you read and read and read and read mysteries is your favorite genre, you know that the detective is really important. It's the one thing that keeps the reader engaged. So focusing on that persona, and I'm going to put a link up at the end of today's Mystery Monday with a short worksheet, introduction and worksheet about how to go about creating your mystery protagonist. And once again, why it's so important to create an engaging protagonist. That person is the person who carries the whole story. Because we started out with the tropes, those are the things people expect. But what really gets readers to love your story is that they somehow love your detective. Now, they don't always have to be. Hi, Ron. Thanks for being here. Your detective isn't always necessarily likable, but he certainly needs a personality. So the more time you spend developing your main character, your protagonist, the better able your readers are going to be in getting into that story and really rooting for that detective to figure it all out. So, once again, my name is Zara Altair, and this is Mystery Monday, and we're talking about mysteries, writing, and reading. And because I'm a writer, I like to focus on writing. I love to have questions. So if you have any questions, just post them in the comments. And that was my kitty Tidy. He's here to join us. And you'll see his very own personal ladder in back of me. That's Tidy's ladder. He loves to sit up there and watch the world. Anyway, so I had a question earlier about, I've always wanted to write a mystery. I read mysteries all the time. I think I can do this. Any tips? Well, yes, I think the biggest tip is to really work hard on creating your main character. A lot of the basic story writing, a lot of basic story writing applies to mysteries, of course, because you're writing a story. But the thing that really engages the reader is that character you create and their persona and how they deal with other people and how they look at the world. And just think of all the mysteries that you've read and what you liked about the main character, and getting in, listening to their voice, looking at how they approach other people, how they approach problem solving. Some of them are very action oriented. Some of them are very, very logical. You know, Nero Wolfe sat in a room and solved mysteries. So it all depends on your character. And the more you know about your main character, your detective, the better able you are to, when you come up with your storyline and your plot and the other characters in the mystery, the more you know about your protagonist, the better able you are to put him or her in any situation dealing with any type of personality that you throw at him or her. So that's the place that I would recommend that you start, is with your protagonist. They're the person that carries the whole story. So anyway, thanks for that question. Let's see, I have another story. How do you hide clues without making them stick out? Well, I know when you're writing, at least for me, it seems like the clues are like waving red flags and going, hi, I'm a clue. Um, so there are a few tricks to doing that. I've written an article, 10 Ways to Hide Your Clues, and I'll actually post a link to that later. But right now, a lot of it can be done with weaving with words, and that's where your writing skills really come to the fore. For instance, if your detective is looking around the room, looking at things, then you have a list of things that he sees in the room. And in that room, one of those things is a major, major clue. But as you list them, instead of having that major, major clue at the beginning of the things he sees or at the end of the things he sees, you can put it in the middle. So it's kind of this long list, and sometimes your readers will just kind of skim over it, skim through them, this, and this. And your big clue is hidden right in those words. And I will post the link to the article so you'll get some more ideas at the end. But that is one of the best ways to do it. Okay, and then yesterday, a little bit early, but yesterday on Twitter, Wynne Kelly Charles asked, what if you get stuck? Well, that happens in any story writing process, but tell you that going back to your characters and going back to your outline can really help, because sometimes it feels like you're going off track with your story. So there are a couple of things you can do when you're feeling stuck. One of them is real basic story editing process, which is your scene moving the story forward? If it's not moving the story forward, just put it aside, keep it as an outtake. You don't have to delete it, just take it out of the story and keep an outtake file and keep it over there. You may want to revive it at some point in time. But right now, if it's not moving the story forward, then you want to take that scene out of your story. And a couple of other ways that you can get yourself unstuck is to look ahead in your story. This is how your scene is moving the story forward. To look ahead in your story and see how you can connect that scene that you're writing now with what happens in the future. So it may only take something as simple as a short line of dialogue or an action on a part of one of the characters in the scene to tie it all together and to kind of nudge you forward into the next stage of your story. I hope that helped. See if I have any more notes about that. So getting stuck happens to us all, so don't feel alone, and there are ways out of it. You just have to kind of take a step back and look at your overall story and see where that scene is. Sometimes it just happens to be a matter of scene placement. So the scene maybe needs to move to a different place in the story. Um, it's that simple. So welcome everybody who's joined. My name is Zara Altair, and this is Mystery Monday, where we talk about mysteries, and you can ask me anything. So happy to see any questions that you have. For some of you may not know that I write mysteries, and I write mysteries set in an historical time period, which was long ago. It's the early 6th century in Italy, and it's a time that many people don't think about. It's a time when the Ostrogoths ruled Italy, and Rome was actually not the center of the Roman world. The center of the Roman world was in Constantinople. And the actual capital of Italy at that time was Ravenna. The mysteries are set far, far, far away from Ravenna, down in the boot of Italy, in a province called Bruttia. And they're far, far, far away from the king, Theodoric, and everything that is happening there in Ravenna. And the governor at that time is, we know this from Theodoric's prime minister, who wrote letters that are all collected, that he collected himself in a collection of letters, which he calls the Varii, so various things. And in those letters, there are several that chastise the local governor there for not paying attention, for kind of diverting tax money, so it didn't end up in the king's treasury, it stayed there. And also, there was a lot of unrest there. In the northern part of Italy, there were many, many Ostrogoths. They had all received some kind of recompense for being Ostrogoths in the king's Italy. Some of it was land, much of it was revenue from taxes and things like that. But in the south, there weren't that many Ostrogoths. And far away from the king and his rule, things were getting out of hand, and rich landowners were exploiting poorer people, and also the church was exploiting people and dealing in slavery and collecting, as it were, donations from the rich landowners, which made the clerics in the church quite wealthy as well. So it was a very vibrant setting for mysteries, and I really have fun writing the mysteries and doing all that. So let's go back to this scavenger hunt. I thought I'd read you a little passage from the first mystery in the Argolicus mystery series, which is called The Used Virgin. And Argolicus and his tutor companion Nicholas are trying to find a long-lost friend who has mysteriously disappeared. And Nicholas has overheard that someone is being kept somewhere. They're at the governor's villa, and he's wondering if that person that's being secretly kept is Argolicus' father's old friend. So I'll just read you a little bit of this, because this is the part of the scavenger hunt, is going off and trying to find the answers. Nicholas slipped back into the room. I think one lamp should suffice. He pulled the lamp from the folds of his tunic and held it up. They bundled their cloaks around them against the storm. Nicholas lit the lamp and then pulled down the cover. Argolicus followed. He seemed to know the way down the dark hallways until they came to a side entrance. The cloudburst had stopped for a moment. Nicholas lifted the cover of the storm lamp. The dim light shone out on a sea of mud beyond the paving stones. Argolicus stepped off into the mud. His feet sank into the ground and mud clung to his shoes. "This will take some time," he whispered. Nicholas nodded. "Masters, those two men were big." Argolicus looked down at his diminutive tutor. "We'll think of something." They trudged away, sinking and slipping in the mud toward the first outbuilding. The storm lamp cast little light. The clouds seemed close and blackened the sky. They weren't really able to look at the small, sketchy map they had drawn in the room. Argolicus tried to remember all he had seen during the day when they were looking at the horses. The stable to the right, a barn behind, the large building out by the vineyard. Where were the others? They couldn't just stumble and slide around in the dark mud. They had to search systematically. But if they went everywhere, surely someone would see them. He wasn't looking forward to meeting two big and antagonistic men. He was bigger than Nicholas, but his fighting skills had rusted during his time in Rome. Plus, he'd never really excelled at military arts. Their plans seemed ridiculous, walking around in the mud in the dark without knowing where they were going. Plus, they really didn't know if the prisoner was Adeodatus, and why had he let his loyalty to his father's friend lead him on this wild goose chase? He slipped and fell on his knee. "Master," Nicholas whispered, "it's all right, I'm fine, but perhaps we should turn back." There, he had voiced his thought. "If we go back without looking, what will we tell Ebrimuth?" They trudged on, slipping through the sticky ooze of mud. The first outbuilding was by the stables and held tack and other equipment for horse handling. Up the slope, and blessedly less muddy, was the barn. At the near end was a lean-to filled with large pitchforks and other instruments for animal handling. At the far end of the barn was a shed with small doors opening along the front at chest height. Argolicus, delighted that the mud was not as deep, hurried into the dark toward the shed. "Master, no! I won't stop until I know we have looked everywhere for Adeodatus." He opened the door. He smelled birds and heard an enormous cackling and rustling of feathers. A large and strong, buff-colored bird launched feet first against his shin, gouging him just below his muddy knee. The birds made a horrendous din that hurt his ears. He backed out and slammed the door. He leaned down to massage his leg. "Master, they are a fad among the rich country folk. They're called chickens." "I will never have them at my place." He tried to wipe the mud off his leg so he could see the wound. Blood oozed down his leg, leaving a track down his muddy skin. Nicholas made a small noise. Argolicus looked up. "What?" "You've been away from the country too long." Nicholas burst into muffled laughter behind his hand. The lantern bobbed. "Hi, I'm Zara Altair, and this is Mystery Monday, and so thanks for joining us. I'm reading a scavenger hunt part of a mystery called The Used Virgin, and the detective, Argolicus, is looking for a long-lost friend. Argolicus looked at the jiggling light of the lantern. His leg was a mess. His cloak sagged with mud. Sticking to everything were hundreds of tiny down feathers from the birds. "Devil birds," he muttered. "How could anyone think of such hideous things as a prestigious fad?" A cow in the barn started lowing. "Let's get out of here before someone comes to check on the animals." As he spoke, a door opened in the slave quarters and women's voices carried up the hill. Two lights glowed as they advanced. Nicholas closed the storm lamp. Argolicus and Nicholas scurried behind the barn. The women headed up to the chicken coop. When they opened the door to check, the noise started up again. They closed the door, chatting and laughing, and headed back down the slope. "There's one more place to look, the winery," Argolicus said. "Off we go." Nicholas opened the lantern again, and they headed up the hill. Thunder rolled in the distance, but when Argolicus looked up, the clouds were breaking. He saw a few stars. The ground was covered in grass. As they walked, the grass scraped mud off his feet with every step. As they approached, the winery loomed dark and large. It was built into the side of the hill on the edge of the vineyard. The complex was large, larger than the villa. They skirted the slave quarters. Amazingly, the big double doors were not barricaded. Argolicus held his breath, waiting for a squeak as he pushed at the right side of the door. Not a sound. The hinges were well oiled. Obviously, the slaves were kept busy in the off-season. An overpowering scent of grape must assaulted his nose. The room was like a large cavern. In the vague light of the lantern, Argolicus could not see a ceiling. In the center of the room, huge wooden timber stood tall with ropes swinging from various pulleys attached. In the middle, an even larger timber, like the trunk of an old oak tree, jutted out at an almost horizontal angle. "Can't be in here. If he's here at all, it will be in another room. Master, careful!" Too late, Argolicus felt a sound thud to his forehead as he bumped into one of the poles, keeping the big turning log in place. "Stay by me. See there?" Nicholas held up his lamp. Next to the great wine press was a large rectangular hole in the floor for stomping the grapes. "You don't want to fall in." "Hell, the martyrs, this place is a death trap in the dark. Let's get to the other side." They found an archway behind the large press. Nicholas lifted the lamp. The scent of fermenting grapes was stronger here than in the large press room. Across from them was a large room filled with amphorae, neatly arranged with labels tacked on the walls. Mulsum, Turculi, a small stack of carinum, and other labels obscured by darkness. To the right, a long and broad hallway led to the various archways opening into rooms for processing and storing wine. "This isn't promising," Argolicus said. "Let's look more, master." Argolicus spotted two doorways at the end of the hall. Wooden doors closed off the rooms. They hurried down the hallway, almost choked by the musty smells. Across one doorway, a large wooden bar blocked access. Argolicus heard a moan. Then, "Just let me die. Here. Here." Argolicus motioned to the wooden bar. Nicholas set down the lamp. Together they lifted off the bar. Argolicus opened the door. The stench was overpowering. It was not fusty grapes, but human excrement. Stacked around the room were baskets for harvesting grapes. Argolicus heard another moan. On the floor behind the baskets in the far corner of the room, a man lay on his side in a pool of muck, excrement, and blood. What was left of his tunic clung to his body with clots of blood. In front of his face, a dirty bowl held leftover food. His hands were tied in front so he would have to lap at the bowl like an animal. His feet were tied with rope, which led to a ring in the wall. He moaned. Argolicus took a step forward. "Adeodatus? Adeodatus!" Adeodatus blinked one eye. The other was swollen shut. "Argolicus? What are you doing?" "Let's get you out of here." Argolicus bent to untie the ropes. Nicholas? Nicholas set down the lamp and began untying the knot at the wall ring. Adeodatus began crying and mumbling incoherently. So young, I didn't, she tripped, screaming. Argolicus murmured as he worked the rope. Don't worry, it's all over. He freed the rope. We'll get you out of here. I think not, a voice behind him boomed. Argolicus and Nicholas turned and stood. Nicholas was right. The men were big. Okay, that's an excerpt from the used version, and it's an example of the evidence scavenger hunt, where the detective goes off to figure out who actually committed the crime. So I want to thank everybody for joining me here today on Mystery Monday. And in the comments, I will post 2 links. One, the one important thing you need to write a killer mystery, and that's about your writing about your detective. And the other is the link to the article, 10 Ways to Hide Your Clues. So thank you, everybody. This is a new venture, Mystery Monday, every Monday at this time here on Facebook Live. I want to thank you all for joining me and for your great questions. So come back with more next week. Thanks again.